The next question is for those who have been facing home insecurities in our community, and it's about regarding reducing rent burden and housing instability for economically disadvantaged individuals in our community. Even before the pandemic, housing opportunities for the vulnerable population in New York City, including people with disabilities, was extremely limited. Now, New York City is at a crisis level in terms of developing affordable housing for the vulnerable population. So how do you envision working with the council to ease the rent burden and stabilize housing for the vulnerable population while keeping them in our community?
I mean, the housing issue is definitely a big one in our city, especially during the pandemic. It's just gotten, if anything, it's just shown the gap even more. And so I think the goal is that we need to make sure that folks who are in their homes are able to stay in their homes, and that we're able to actually provide the rental assistance that they need. And that's something that, that KCS has been doing, that I've been doing throughout the pandemic, is a lot of these folks are either not eligible for certain programs, or they don't have access to the services, or they don't know about the services or how to get assistance. And so that's been a huge issue we've seen across our communities, and that's something that we need to try and keep pushing for, is that we keep affordable housing affordable, and that we make sure that it's accessible as well. Because I know that there are even a lot of condos, co-ops in this building with a lot of seniors that have disabilities, for example, and other folks that don't have access to the facilities themselves. And so making sure that landlords are held accountable and that they are able to stay in their homes, because, for example, someone may have a disability as they age, right? And so if that happens, how do we make sure that they're able to stay and healthy in their homes as well? But rent protections also for renters as well as landlords, because a lot of the folks that are landlords here also in this district are one or two family, usually immigrant owned properties. They're not these huge developments. And so how do we protect them so that they can also pay off their mortgages and also stay in the community as well and not be pushed out? And of course, making sure seniors are housed. And one of the best ways to do that is, especially for the older adults in the community who are frail and may have certain disabilities physically, as well as families with other types of disabilities, we need to make sure that we're able to keep them in their homes by lowering the property taxes or keeping the property taxes low, because the co-ops and condos have extremely high rates of that. And so making sure that they can stay, especially on fixed incomes, stay in their homes, that's a huge priority as well.
The Mayor's Office of People with Disabilities should be strengthened as a department, so we can put money in there, so we can make sure that our disabled have the funding and make sure that we provide housing. I have said in many times that if we build new housing, we need to build affordable. And I've said that I would do at least, I would not let a developer develop without 5% of affordable housing for seniors. And we want to include our disabled in there as well, so that they have a roof over their head permanently. As well as there are many organizations that need to partner with the city, such as transitional services that have housing for our disabled and seniors. And many disabled. Life Works is another private organization. So we take care of disability, but we need to take care of it on the front lines. We need to make sure our small business owners that have the tools, not grants, not loans, but grants. We need to make sure that we put the money into the Department of People with Disabilities so we can build affordable housing for our disabled and make sure that they maintain a roof over their head and services that is very much needed for everyone, especially for the underserved, such as the Korean community.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a variety of housing issues right here in District 23. I myself live in a home with my family, and my commitment is to keeping people permanently housed as we keep delaying the largest eviction and foreclosure crisis our city has ever seen, with just Band-Aid moratoriums. And so in 2019, I was really proud to be alongside so many of our housing advocates to expand tenant protections. And just this year, we saw recent expansions to right to counsel to ensure none of our neighbors are unduly evicted or at risk of homelessness. And that's an immense amount of protection that our tenants really need to making sure that they have the legal support that they need to making sure they can continue to live in their homes. And so we need language justice embedded in those programs, right? To making sure that we have someone in your corner that speaks your language to protect you as well. And so, I remember a time when I was on food stamps that we were afraid of losing our home. And we live in a single family home, just like about 70% of our district does. But we're behind on our property taxes. Yet our city council actually still is perpetuating the tax lien sale that we still have, that we can take your home away if you can't pay your water or tax bills at all, and suddenly you're relegated to homelessness. So it's about making sure that we can get rid of and abolish the tax lien sale, protect our tenants, especially with our state electeds. I'm really happy to have worked with State Senator Julia Salazar on a state legislature policy to hopefully move along with good cause eviction that says nobody can be evicted out of their home unless there is a real and just cause embedded in that. And so I really think that, from our co-ops to our homes to, our apartments as well, the council has to work to making sure that, we wield our land use powers, which is one of the most important components of our powers as hopeful future council members, to commit to 100% affordable housing units that are also ADA compliant, especially for our seniors and people with disabilities, to offer subsidized retrofits like grab bars that many of our co-ops already have, ramps and wheelchair accessibility, and wraparound services for mental health care. These are the things that are going to keep people continually housed, because I met a family just this week that came to our office who told us that they didn't know that they were at risk for eviction because they weren't receiving the mail in their own language. They speak Punjabi, but all the information came in English. So these kinds of protections are really, I think, the way that we make sure that we continue to keep people permanently housed, and making sure we're not seeing a massive eviction crisis across our city and across District 23.
Please tell us about your position on supporting underfunded, under-resourced, the small to medium Asian American nonprofit organizations like us that have been effectively and efficiently serving this community.
I understand the importance of bringing a task force together, of bringing people to the table so we can continue the discussions that we're having as candidates here. I hope as we do when we're elected to the city council, to continue that commitment to work together so that we can make sure that our services to our families, to our communities, to our underserved have the tools, have the languages. When the census came out, they put out everything in almost every language. Queens is the most diverse borough in the city, and we need to know that everyone can understand what's going on, how to activate services. Small Business Service Association, they come in not only just to find, but they help. They provide the tools, education, so that small businesses, many years ago, working for the mayor's office, we went to businesses and had classes with Small Business Association. So communities and businesses know how to throw out their trash, knows how to do that. I think, as one of my candidates had said before, it's important to give them warnings and not fines. We don't want to serve on the backs of our small businesses. We want to make them thrive. They have to get grants, not loans, and we have to work together with that agency because they have the tools to make all of our business owners thrive. So we want them to survive and we want them to thrive. And that would be my motto, and perfectly putting everybody together as a task force so that we can make each organization such as yours thrive.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, these are often the lifelines that protect so many of our families, because we can't actually get to the major organizations outside of Queens or even just on the other side of Queens either. And accessibility is going to be a really important program to making sure our community groups actually get the funding that they deserve. We have the third largest Asian immigrant population right here in District 23. And I think it's a shame that we don't actually offer equitable funding to all of our community organizations. And so that takes a really strong constituent services model within the council member's office to be in every single corner of our district to understand what the unique needs of all of our community members are. And so, I've been campaigning in 7 different languages. 4 of them are in Asian languages, from Korean to Mandarin to Punjabi to Bangla, and even Hindi and Gujarati. And we've been speaking with even small business owners who are telling us that they're paying between $8,000 and $10,000 just on overhead rent costs to keep their business open, not even to pay their staff a livable wage. And so, that's why I support things like commercial rent relief and commercial rent protections, to making sure that's not a burden from continuing to serve your community members. And that includes a diversity of opportunities to serve your members, whether it's at-home services, whether that's in-person and office services, and also making sure that we can reach our community members and our seniors as well with home visits too. And so I think our council and our state need to be co-governing together to making sure that we're mitigating crises that so many families are going to be needing, and knowing that community-based organizations really deserve the funding, to making sure that we, don't continue to see abysmal funding levels here in New York City.
I feel like y'all are preaching to the choir with this one, because I am a medium community-based nonprofit organization that has been struggling with, government contracts, funding, regulations, 10 million audits a year. How do we get more, resources through the pipeline? It's absolutely crazy. And just a couple things is, I think we might actually even be the second largest Asian population in the city council, in the city council districts. But either way, we have a large percentage of Asians in our community, and we're 15% and growing of the population, and that's a coalition that KCS was part of when we started it, because it used to be less than 1% of the funding for city social services that went to the Asian community. Now it's like 1.2, which is better, and discretionary funding has improved there as well. But I think that the comment and question we would always get when we were advocating for more funds was, well, where's the data? Where's the data and information that shows that your community actually needs this? And I think there's a huge model minority myth that we're fighting against. And we're constantly battling up against that. And it's sort of amazing in a bad way to me that there's no South Asian senior center in our district, or that there is like no East Asian serving senior centers or other things in this district. And, the language access, I cannot emphasize enough, is huge. And I think the contracting process, we need to reinvent that whole process, because if we want small and medium and even large nonprofit community groups to get access to this funding, they need to have the tools necessary to be able to do that, like get MWBE certified. And the contracting process, something that we tried advocating for starting years ago, was putting a little clause in there saying, okay, if you can serve a specific community with a specific language need, you'll get an extra 10 points on your score with this contract. And so I think pushing the city constantly to improve and expand on those on that access is crucial. And I think we need to keep fighting for that, because groups like ours are completely underfunded, and we're doing the work that the city should be doing, and we're constantly underfunded. Sorry, I know I went over time.
Thank you very much. As for the final question before we wrap up the session, and please share your final thoughts on your plans and commitment on advancing social and economic opportunities for Korean and other Asian families in our community. What can we expect from you that we can't expect from other candidates in your district? Jaslin, we're going to start with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I really do believe, again, that real social, economic, and racial justice is about ensuring the right to dignity at every stage of life. And I've dedicated my life as a community organizer and a public servant who has defended our families from xenophobia, white supremacy, and hate violence. We just saw a neighbor in our district, actually in Glen Oaks, who's a train operator, who stopped his train, his MTA train, before an Asian man was actually thrown onto the subway tracks. And he's a local hero right here who is doing the work right now. And it's these kinds of bystander interventions that I think are going to keep us safe. I'm well equipped to build a city that relies on community-based organizations to build local grassroots power. And I've had the honor and privilege of working with such organizations at the city and federal level, like the National Asian Pacific American Women's Forum, to protect our community members from detention and deportation, to expanding rights to healthcare, and to closing the gender wage gap, which we know varies across the Asian American community, where Indian Americans like myself are more likely to make more cents on the dollar than our Bhutanese or Vietnamese neighbors as well. And so, the diversity of our communities is something that I take very seriously. Again, we're campaigning in 7 different languages and leading interfaith work to achieve these pillars of justice, from hosting Ramadan iftars before Eid, langars at our gurdwara, meeting with local rabbis, and I just came from a Hindu mandir right in our neighborhood as well. And so there was actually a bill that was introduced in 2017 by our current council member to mandate senior facilities maintain language and cultural competency and translation services for senior centers, but it never went through committee, and it was never brought to the floor to the vote. And so that's going to be one of my priorities if elected to city council. And I take very seriously the direct services that can be brought to all of our community members. I've done it from registering us to city for the census. I've done it to protecting us, from immigration clinics who are going to price us out. I've done it with groups like CIDA to protect our tenants and homeowners as well. So economic justice and stability is at the forefront of this campaign, building local community power as well. And I'm really proud to have led a grassroots effort that is going to be in coalition with every single community member of our broadly Asian American community as well.
One reality is that I've had, I guess, the privilege and frustration of having to implement and deliver a lot of the services in the city that have, unfortunately, we've seen policies that don't favor our communities. And I think one of the things that I would really try to push for, I mean, we've said this a few times tonight, but I think language access, no matter what issue area you're talking about, is very key into reaching out into the community. And I cannot emphasize enough how important it is to use the groups that are already doing the work on the ground. Faith-based leaders like the Guruduaras, right, and the mosques, and the churches and the temples, right? Those are all places where communities come to and naturally congregate. So how do we use those natural places where people meet to actually tell them, hey, you know what, there's this grant that you can apply for your small business, and this will help you get through the next 6 months, right? Or how do you get, sign up for voter registration, or why is it important to get involved in your local community politics? And I think all these things are very important. And I think that's educating folks is definitely a key aspect of making sure that they're included in the conversation and that they participate and that they speak up and actually advocate for themselves and their communities. And I think that's one of the key areas that we need to do. And case in point, this a lot of the Asian hate crimes that we've been seeing rise up, that's something where our communities for the first time, some of our communities for the first time are actually speaking up and speaking out and speaking for other communities as well. And I think that's something that shouldn't be dismissed, because that's actually a huge thing, because we're not used to doing that as an Asian community. And I think we need to try and promote that more. And we need to work together. We need to work across coalitions and different communities, make sure that the small businesses get what they need, and that making sure that schools open safely, across the board, whatever issue area it is, we need to make sure that our diverse communities are part of that process. And, I think it would be great to have someone who can reflect that and represent that in the city council as well.
Experience matters, and it's very important that we're not just advocates for our community, that we know where to get the money, find it, put the shovel in the ground, and make sure that everything we're talking about here tonight is important. And that's why we need to make sure that DFTA gets the proper funding for our seniors and our partners in our senior and community service. We have to make sure that we get the people with disabilities to become an agency so that we have some teeth and some money that we can bring and be partners in the community and have the round table together, and make sure that our conversations are continuing. They're beginning here. This is the oldest district in the city. We have 70% are seniors, underserved, and we're also a transportation desert. We need to make sure that we have transportation services. I have vowed, Councilman Vallone and Councilman Holden, who I've been endorsed with, have put money into transportation services to make sure that our seniors and people that are disabled can get to their doctor's appointments. And I have vowed that I will continue that in this district to make sure that happens. So that's the first shovel in the ground. It's very important that all of us work together and build that coalition and task force. Make sure that our languages are served, and make sure that everybody can understand how the city works so that they don't get fines, that they can work together with the city to make sure that we don't want them just to survive. We want them to thrive. And I would like everybody to vote for me on June 23rd for city council, because I would like to represent you to make sure that each one of our communities are served well and thrive together as we work together to make this community a better place to live, work, and play.
Thank you all very much. This wraps up the New York City Council election, District 23, Meet the Candidates Forum. Tonight, we met with Jaslin, Kaur, Linda Lee, Debra, Markell in District 23. We thank all the candidates who participated in today's forum. We wish you the best of luck on your campaign. CIDA and TKC encourage everyone watching today to get more information about your local election by visiting vote.nyc. On the website, you can access detailed information in Korean and 5 other languages. Thank you very much. Stay well, everyone. Good night.
Thank you.